definition, attack on the core.
I guess today I will focus on Windows and Linux platform. And basically you get some write vulnerability and what you can do with it. And we end up how you can turn it to kernel mode execution. And last part will be about when you got kernel mode execution, what you can do afterwards. So basically you can start with who I am. I'm Hlavaty. Currently working for King Team based in China. Previous 4 years I was working for research, where I started to analyzing some malware, then complex malware threats, and ended up with some kernel mode development and developing some anti-APT solutions. And currently I'm going to China and to join the King Team, where I finally focus on researching the kernel. And this basic outline of this talk. I can start how to turn some write vulnerability. You can have some semi-write, or you can sometimes when you have to write vulnerability, you can sometimes doesn't know what's written. You have no control about it, but you sometimes can guess what's written. And what this kind of vulnerabilities you can turn into some full kernel read write to kernel. And also we cover some vulnerability cases and why it's relatively easy on current OS platforms to get some kind of code execution on basically own system. And we end up in second part, which is because when one time you get kernel code execution, your point of view was changed. You just now you are not anymore attacking, but you are developing on the kernel. So basically you have new goals and new environment you are working with. And that's a really good feature that you don't have a shellcode for your payload in kernel, but you're developing some advanced code in, for example, in C++. We can start first part, which will be basically how to force the kernel to provide us some kernel I/O framework, even though when you have some really limited options how to do it. So basically we can start at first with someone can say outdated antiquated system information, which is basically from Windows 8.1, it requires administrator privileges to use it. But basically my point of here is that even when you're an administrator or root, it doesn't mean you have full control over the OS. Basically to get full control, it's my point to get some kind of code execution. But still, even the administrator, so that means you don't have full control of the system, but you have a little bit of privileges. But when you're an administrator, you can use this function anyway, and so you can basically really easier things for you to attack the kernel to get some kernel code execution. And you can easily bypass also the reverse enforcement. Because my point of this antiquated system information that you can we have this function of tying a lot of information, so like module-based objects like key process, and this kind of stuff, and also you can query the page tables, which is really great stuff. Okay, so basically when you're not administrator, but you have some write vulnerability. They said sometimes you don't have full control what's written, but for example with some listen tree vulnerabilities, you can you know that you write some pool address, which is and basically pool is always about the kernel mode images. And two nice values in Windows kernel image is the user probe address and high user address, which basically is resolved dynamically, which is okay. And it means that you can read the write kernel up to these values. And it's okay that it's resolved dynamically, so what's not okay that it then stored in writable part of the image, which can be an anytime change. Okay, so basically our plan is that you patch these two values, then you can write up to, for example, up to the pool, then you can write again to these values to gain full control and write or read anywhere in the kernel. And basically after that you can clean up to the original values. And why you want to clean up is because someone can say that, okay, but here's patch guard and patch protection. So, but on the other way, it's the main point here is that patch guard was not, in my opinion, was not developed because it's some restricting the attacking, but exactly the opposite, restricting the security vendors to do some correct stuff. For example, not to hook like malware across all the system, but use provided callbacks from the Windows, which is quite fine practice, and it's the same powerful. But as you can see, also it's this year 09, it was interesting presentation, how some vendors broke it anyway, how to bypass patch guards, and I think it's not a good idea. But anyway, for when you're an attacker, patch guard is not so important for you because you can patch the values and use a function which uses these values and patch it back. Basically, because the patch guard is invoked at some interval, you have good chance to patch it, use it, and patch it again in the interval, and that's okay for you. And the same thing what's doable on Windows, it's the same manner doable on Linux. Because patch thread, you have some very nice structure, it's thread info, and it's a very important member there is address limit. And basically, by substituting this address limit for example, some pool address, or even better with some null pointer, you can use pipes and you can basically read write to kernel for free. Okay, but someone can say that okay, we have PXN UDRF, which can handle it in x86, but on that side, it's not on default build of the Linux, which basically who cares. And I can say that Android really don't care because on Android it's not implemented. It's implemented kernel exec just on some devices, but UDRF is implemented not on any device. So basically, it doesn't stay against the rating value, and you can really, with some good write malloc, you can own the kernel. But on that side, why we do some reading to kernel and trying to do some kernel IO framework? It's because that it was introduced supervisor mode address and execute prevention, and that's basically because before you can, for example, have some vulnerability and you can rewrite the pointers with some user mode pointer, and basically you can use some input text technique, which after the syscall, after the switching to kernel, press up your context, and you can use user mode memory for owning the system. It was quite okay. But with these features, these 200 features, it becomes quite complicated. But when you can see it in outside, that is you are working with virtual addresses, which is basically abstraction on some physical address, which you want really reader write to. And basically, that abstraction means that virtual address is just contains some set of indexes. It depends on count of levels, page table, and at the end, it points to some physical address. And my point that at this physical address, before that pointing to physical address, you have some descriptor of this address, and you have all the flags there. So basically, on the point how to attack these two features and spawn system is that you just change flags, which is a pretty old known thing, but currently it was done some nice proof concept by MWR Labs, which basically proved that it's really easy doable. You can basically, in x64 bits, it's even easier because you have a lot of other space, so you can basically choose some isolated memory, which is far away from other memory, from Madu's memory. And then basically you just patch these bytes in the page table. But it can have some problems because, for example, on Windows you have 4 levels page tables. So you have to force 4 times reading to these page table structures. But not in case when you use some self-referencing trick. And basically it's good enough to write just once. You can write indexes based on several self-references and also these flags. But when you patch it once, you have problems because you patch it to supervisor memory, and then you can touch from user mode anymore. But it can be easily bypassed because you can use some kernel functions. I will talk 2 slides later about it. Basically, when you're able to copy that your shellcode or your data in this memory, which is basically flagged as supervisor, you can provide even its virtual address is basically from user mode to kernel, and it's no panic will cost. And the other thing is that virtual address is some abstraction, and basically it's just some symbolic value. And basically it's this virtual addresses points at the end some physical address, and when we're able to make some alias from your user mode address to some physical memory, which is currently linked with some kernel mode address, you can basically read or write to this memory, even if it's that memory in the kernel marked as some page protected or read-only. And very nice work was done this year. You can see that link from Unix. Read to the technique, which proves that to make this kind of alias, it's not necessary even to touch with some vulnerability. You can do it quite with some physical spraying and this kind of stuff. So it's pretty cool. And the main point of this virtual address, that's, as I said, it's very symbolic. So basically, when it comes to handling in the kernel, this from Linux, but it's pretty similar on Windows, let's say. At least the idea that you check just the symbolic value that if it's in some range. This only the virtual address is in some range, but it doesn't matter that it doesn't check if the page, if it's early user mode page. And that's my point. You can use this function if you use some mode alias, and you can read right to kernel if you have this behavior. Basically, we can come to another part. It's what sometimes happens in kernels. And basically, it's out-of-boundary vulnerabilities where there is some index provided from user shipped to kernel. And with this index, I've done some boundary checks, but it's basically failed some overflow on the flow. And then basically is this index used to indexing some kernel buffer. And it's really easy and trivial to exploit it. Even easier it's when you don't enable SM supervisor mode access prevention, because then you can basically provide the large index and force the kernel to check read or write to kernel memory, because in user mode you can allocate fairly big chunks of memories, and then in the loop you can just invoke this vulnerability and check inside your buffer if it's a read and written to your pool, and if yes, then you can resolve that address. Okay, but let's say that on Windows it still works, but on some Linux it doesn't work anymore because they enabled a nice feature, this access prevention. But it doesn't mean that it's killed, because on that side it's really powerful vulnerability, and when you have some read access, you just have to avoid touching the user mode memory, and so you can still resolve successfully you can leak out of memory and resolve the address of this buffer, basically. So it can be really powerful because your target is every time just kernel. You don't want to read from user mode, you want to read just from kernel. So its implementation will be much more complicated, but still doable. And as for write, it's even more complicated, because when you write some random bit to kernel, because you don't know where is the buffer, you can cause kernel panic. But on the other side, when you target some relative position structure, you can write to it and you can point system anyway. So basically, it's doable also in display. And the other thing that sometimes happen is that you have some kmalloc, and then it's afterwards with some copy from user, copy to user. And in this kmalloc, you use some user provided index, and it's basically, or some index, let's say you can alter somehow, and then basically it's added something to it, and basically it's overflow. So basically it allocates a really small chunk of memory, but then it's invoked some copy to user from user. And basically, in normal circumstances, it will crash, because now you will try to copy to this memory out of bytes. So basically, you will write all those stuff and it will cause panic. But you can avoid it, because, for example, on nature of this copy from user on Linux is that it can crash. It can cause the page fault, but in that case, it will not. When it comes from the copy from user or copy to user, basically mem copy, then you just page fault and check, okay, it's from there, okay, just stop copying, and that's it. So basically, you just allocate user mode to pages, and second page you set the page will protect it, so it will be, when you copy your data, at the end of first page, it will trigger the page fault and it stopped. So basically, you can now to kernel how many bytes you want without kernel panic. And those stuff that's okay. For example, at Android it's not enabled KSLR, but on Windows, on Linux, it's enabled. So how you can handle it KSLR? Because, for example, it's end system information, it's just for administrator. And okay, let's say that we are not elevated user, and the same for Linux. The protocol sims are also, they have some, you have addresses, you have the names of the symbols, but you don't have the addresses. So basically the same situation. If you are not elevated, you don't have such informations about the info leaks from the kernel. So basically, it's always the way. And one of the good bug was found by Juru, and it was very simple. Because basically, when you try to jump to kernel mode address, some kernel mode address, and this address is, in coincidence, key false entry, you will know it because they don't properly in chub handling zeroed all the registers. Okay, it was very nice, but it was for Windows 7, and now it's fixed. Okay, but some similar features can be found anyway if you look it up, because it's kind of these chubs, it's really kind of old codes basically. So we have to find it. And another way is that seems pretty available. That's some timing attacks, because let's say vegetables is quite old concept. It was designed decades before, but it was not really about some security issues. It was most important was just security performance. And so that's it. That, for example, it seems doable, some timing attacks that you check your page fault and you measure the time of the page faults. And I add some references, you can read really good material about it. And so you can believe it. I contributed some research and it really seems that's doable. And the other thing about KSLR is that quite funny thing that, okay, you have pretty well, with folder space, you have pretty well randomized, it's okay. But on the underside, in physical memory, it doesn't. You have a pretty out of static addresses, and you can address it when you start attacking the page tables. You can address the fact, and it can really help you. And also the recent, as MWR Labs or in the Usenix conference was some from some university was some research and against this page tables, because as I said, it's quite the old concept, and now it's a pretty nice vector to attack. It seems that attacks work. Pretty cool. And the other thing that's, okay, we got some writing to kernel, but even when you have some writing to kernel, it wasn't being, it will be in good state that it wouldn't be easy to gain some control. But on the other side, it's all about design. When you have not such a good design, you have problems. And for example, the first example is some IntelliJ entry, which is quite shared concept also in Linux. In Linux, we have reset structure. In Windows, we have release entry. It's basically, this is some structure which is, let's say, inherited to a lot of. It's pretty common that it's inherited in a lot of structures in kernel, because it means that it's it can be used in some container. And basically, what's pitfall here? That we have some APIs working with it, but in other places it just accessed by directly. So basically, okay, we have introduced Windows have introduced recent API sessions. It's quite nice, okay, but one thing is that implemented just when it comes only to unlinking. And I think before 3 years, 2 years, I don't know exactly, I found this kind of flaw. It is bypassed. And we worked to Microsoft when I was working for reset, and they quite fixed it in user mode. That basically, as you can see in the picture, we have some, let's say in the kernel, some linked structures, and basically you first cannot write to this one of this IntelliJ entry, and you relink your list to some, for example, some user mode. And in user mode, okay, you have some other chunks which is called linked. And what's the point? You can force the kernel to use not just first one chunk, which is quite obvious that it's linked to some user modes, and it's not linked, so it's recent sections will kill it. But on the other side, when you go further to this chain, you will find some quite linked member. So basically, you can use this one, and nobody will complain. And it's because that list entry assertions that's used just when it comes to unlinking, not when it comes to searching at algorithm itself. That's quite good. And even though it will be implemented, correctly, also like in user mode that in searching algorithm, because it's not such performance overhead, then it's still a problem that in Windows it's quite common that you use that flink or belink of the structure directly in other places, not just in this functions API which is for this use. So this basically failed because when you can do this kind of trick, you can basically force the kernel to use your own content or like your own data structure which will be pretty trusted in the kernel. It can be really good. And the other thing is that, let's say in C and C++ early C++ and C can remind itself, but let's say when C++ reminds C, it's quite okay. It's quite nice because it should be that way because C++ is based on C. That it was introduced some new principles that suffer from compilers. It's okay. Also, when C++ you can write pretty fast code. It's nice. But when it's opposite side, when C reminds to C++, you have really big troubles because you need some immodulity in your C codes. Then you introduce some function pointers stored in some structures. But you get a problem because it's not any support from language, not support from the compiler to add in these pointers. So basically, you have plain pointers and can be easily rewritten in even when you want to do some hardening, it's really hard to do it. And in current state, as you have in kernels, for example, in Linux, I did some research and it was really about, I think, 100,000 structures with some, let's say, hidden pointers. It's a pretty big number. And basically, that's your target. And that's plain pointers you can rewrite. The other thing is that you have, in C++, you have some, let's say you have object, and at the beginning object you have found object, and later in the code you can substitute this big object with a small object. It's basically called inheritance in C++. It's not supported, it's kind of feature on C++. But in C, it's called typecasting feature. And what I was told when I was developing before in C++ that I have no matter what, but I have to avoid typecasting because it's early error prone. And basically, when it comes to exploiting, it can be your next target, and because of typecasting, you can make some type fusions, and it can really works very well when it comes to exploiting. Another thing is that you have a lot of structures with plenty just data pointers. You can also own these reverse data pointers. Basically, it was some good ideas that you can substitute. You can control counterflow not just by rewriting the pointers to some codes or some state, but you can just rewrite some data, and you can control the counterflow. It's quite hard to implement, but it's doable, and I think it's even easier when you have this data in plain state. And let's say in C, it's very hard to change it to be some hardened. And so basically, all of these issues comes from the one thing that it's really no hardening of these pointers. So basically, you have some write to kernel, you can override these pointers, and you can clone the system basically in some steps. So it can be. And another good example is that legacy remains C++ is that you have in Linux you have CAM-ops, which basically for modularity some tables, and you can rewrite this pointer, you can clone the system, and it's not just only way, but you can also, it's very common that you have ability just to write null pointer, not some arbitrary value, just null pointer. But when you target, for example, this CAM-ops, it can be really useful because CAM-ops is supposed to handle some resource. And for example, you open resource, you working resource, but meanwhile you nullify some routine which have to handle this resource, and you can have some unexpected states, and you can clone. But it's not straightforward, but it's doable. And basically, even when you okay, let's say that OS will want to fix these issues and will introduce some hardening of pointers, but it will be still hard to do it because in C you don't have such mechanism that I will, for example, use this listen tree, it's directly f-link, because I think it's a good idea. It's not such mechanism that says that you are not fucking genius, you can not do it. But basically, if you think it's a good idea, you can do it. Okay, so next part is resisting some state exploitation. And let's say before Windows 8.1, it was really easy to found. Even kids can do it. Because it was just, for example, some kind of KSLR, but it was not KSLR because you have some APIs which leaks everything. Okay, you have some randomization, introducing the pool, which is a good stuff. But on that side, on some SM execution prevention, not was implemented on all platforms. And even if it would be implemented on all platforms, you have not still implemented access prevention, which basically execution prevention without access prevention is not so useful. You can break it very easily. Okay, let's say we have in era of Windows 8.1 and Linux, and also Linux was quite before Windows some hardenings, so it was some good features before. For example, in Linux you can enable also access prevention, which is really nice stuff. But in Windows you cannot, because Windows it was not such good design when it comes to handling with user memory. And it's my pitfall, but I hope it can be fixed in future versions. And also in current systems it was really good stuff done, that you have more hardening, better randomization, except the physical addresses of course, but virtual space is pretty good randomized, and also some heap. And it also introduced some access control improvements, really, also in Android and this kind of stuff, which is really good. And also UEFI, so basically UEFI and its current state is quite challenging, but it's still doable. But let's say in the future that all these features will be gathered, also with no such straightforward play pointers in kernel. And also there will be all other features permanently included in the OS system, so it will be really nice and really challenge to exploit it. It will be, I would say, really hard. And you have to find some really unknown techniques of exploitation. But prerequisites for it is that they have to be really well designed. It has to be kicked out of obsolete code, because that code was written decades ago and it was a really different situation, and you have and you are 2014, so you have to use it, and you can do something. I like, for example, Zero-Night. It was a designer which talk about redesigning from scratch of the software, and I think it's sometimes a really good idea because you can do it even more better. Okay, let's say we got some kind of code execution, and what's going to happen now? Basically now you changed your point of view. Before you got kernel execution, you want to go to the kernel no matter what. You just don't care about cache patch guard, you just patch everything that you want just in order to get the kernel. And also you have to also, because in kernel, when you develop kernel, you have, for example, you work in some structures which have logs, you have to avoid some working with in unlocked states with these structures, but when you are attacking, it just doesn't care. But once time you switch to kernel, you just go to kernel execution, you have to switch your mind. You have to use patch guard and this kind of stuff, because it's really cool. You have really a lot of options and you have to just use it, and it's really bad that you stick with bad habits from attacker point of view. And one of the good features is that under Windows we have a lot of callbacks available for you. For example, you can sit on some callback routines when every time we need to load that process, threads, you can register change, basically almost everything, and also you can attach to some devices to monitor these devices, or create your own kernel worker on the system, so it's really cool. But for that you have some obstacles, because, for example, in these callbacks it's checked some call integrity checks. Also, we have to have on some device object, so you have to handle it in some manner. And one day, okay, driver object as the object is not such a big deal, because you just basically you find it's probably good enough just find one driver object in the kernel, and you can copy all the stuff from it and just nullify some members and set some own members, but the core you can just copy it and kernel will use it without the doubts. It's okay. And once you get this driver object, you can basically attach another object and filtering these objects. It's very nice. Another thing is that you can also develop your legacy driver, or you can play with meaningful drivers. It's really powerful stuff. And my favorite is that you have file competition, which is basically in common used in LPC mechanism, and LPC is everywhere. You have in every process, and its LPC is called even when it's come to resolving some host address. So it's really powerful stuff when you want to do something to monitor. And let's say simplified in Linux, because let's say my idea of Linux is that everything is a file. Okay, that's for this you have some file operations. Okay, so create one, fill some operations you want, and attach to chain. It's quite nice. Even, for example, in Android, you are not able to load your kernel driver inside Android. So you have a problem when you want to introduce some kernel driver. But not in that case. You just need structure and you can register by yourself, because this is registered dynamically, not statically. So it's nice. And why we want to do some kernel escape? Because on some pawn events it's done. Okay, it's good enough to get some administrator root, and that's done. That's done with the game. You win. But in other words, it comes more of tails, because you have some access control checks. For example, if Linux, C Android, or ICL on Windows, and basically kernel escape is its natural bypass. It's just you just develop some your kernel driver and develop a separate developing of some your roots process in two different things. Basically, then your process you can do all good stuff, and you rely that your kernel driver will recognize you, and then okay, it's you. I can help with privileges. You can do it. So basically, in your remote application, you just do normal development, not just special legs. You doesn't have to call some special syscalls, because you know you have there some hooks or something like that. You just use normal development SQL and normal programming. It relies normal system behavior, and you have just some help from kernel mode. So it's a pretty nice feature. But on the side, when you start to developing some kernel driver, or for example, not just on kernel driver, but even though you have some written some proof concepts, you owning some browser, and then you want to execute some native code. But then you got the problem. Okay, we start to breaking each code, and that's not a nice way, because shellcoding is, I think, error prone and time expensive. It's not such a good idea, I think. And for that, I think it was a nice project, as mentioned down. It's some Windows shellcoding in C, which is pretty nice, but we can do it also in C++. And basically, really good thing that, for example, you C or C++ is that compiler do a lot of stuff for you, because compilers now are pretty good. Now it's introduced a lot of instructions you just don't think about. It's just a nice thing. And my point of C++, it's before some decades ago it was okay. Some maybe compiler sucks and it was not so good, but now it's 2014 and compilers are really good. So basically, when you wrote your C++ code, you can write really close to assembler. You can see that okay, write this one, and I see it directly in assembler. It depends just on your skill and how you know your compiler. And some feature is C++. It's really scalable, maintainable. You can develop a lot of modules put together, and it's really flexible. Because on one side you can use also design patterns, which is very nice, and you can build complex frameworks. But anyway, you can stick with C and do it like decades ago. When also a lot of proof concept exploits now it's written in C. Okay, but you got some proof concept, and what else doing? You have to read line by line. It's kind of a mess. Okay, it can be kind of masterpiece and it can work, But basically, when you have to do some more concepts, you can repeat the same code or change it because it's now you have some limited options and some kind of this. And basically end up developing some kind of black boxes, which is linked together, some my model, but when something changed, oh what the fuck, I have to change all of the black boxes. That's the kind of problem. And basically when you use, for example, C++, or just C++, you have some really good framework, let's say, and not necessarily just C++, can be also in C. It can be really powerful because you can mix, for example, user mode and kernel code in one module, for example, in one X file, and you can just build it together. And you can build, when you use, for example, some C++ framework, you can build also not just C++ application, but also C++ Java at the same time. The only one rule is that you don't want to mix the headers from the user mode and kernel mode together. So just only one rule. And basically, your main point when it goes, okay, I want to go some kind of execution, and I got my binary. Okay, you have two options. You can use, for example, this envelope driver method, which basically loads your driver to kernel mode. We have some problems that, okay, it's driver signaling enforcement there, but basically, like the idea is they said that you can easily bypass it. It's not such a big deal. You can just fudge it, use it, fudge it again, and you're fine. On that side, you can do another thing when, for example, this GLC option will be not anymore writable, or will be just compiled, stripped away this kind of field. You can just, okay, I invoke some execute allocable with some execute memory, also writable, put there my binary, fix the role calculations, imports, and okay, we trigger some kind of post execution. It's quite fine. And which is quite beautiful on this, and a good framework, then just basically compile, just normal develops your application, you just compile it, you can mix together kernel mode and user mode, just don't mix the headers, that's one rule. Then as a result, you have your binary without the imports, and you have the relocations, and it's a really mighty thing that you don't have to anymore to care about some, okay, I have to code in some position, in the position dependent code, and it's quite sucks. You have to, when you are doing shell code or some without the relocations, you have to keep in mind a lot of stuff. And also, you don't have in good framework, in a nice framework, you don't have to care about some resolving the imports by yourself, some hashes or something like that. And basically, when you have full C++ framework, in this kind of framework, you can also develop C++ kernel mode driver. It's kind of cool because you can make a lot of concepts there. And basically, as you can see that I normally in code, I just don't bother about some imports. I just use normally some functions from, for example, IOquery workflow, let's say, and to use the C++ in the final compile state, you can see that it's called import, even if it's not imported present in the binary itself, because it's work of some dynamic loader. So basically, in your final binary, you don't have import table, but in your code you don't need to handle some imports. You just some Python script do it for you. It's quite fine. And also you have fix-ups, which are fixed by loader when it comes to allocating your image, for example, to kernel. And also, you don't need to ship some kernel mode driver as a resource to your binary and put it inside and then drop it and load it. You can just I link it together, compile it together as one binary. It can coexistence. User mode cannot go together because only one change is that you have to use some of the functions. Okay, then you have to use some privileged instructions, but you can do it. You can compile it. Also, user mode code with privileged instructions, but basically in user mode code you cannot execute it because it will fail. So basically, we make this kind of framework, and it will be released very soon. I will be, and someday I will come back to Shanghai because some changes we put it out. I have no time to to do it. My original plan was released to no such code, but I did fail because I haven't time, but I hope next week it will be ready. Some references that I don't put in slides. Some guys which I really thanks to, and I read the materials from them. And basically, I have 2 additional slides that we are hiring. We are based in China, in Shanghai. And when you are doing research, and you are able to move to China, and more importantly, you want to work with us and join our team, then just ping us. You'll be our president. And another additional slide is that geek on events, because our team really like competitions and fixing security, and we make some competition which is first worldwide security geek contest, but for smart devices. But it's very different from other contests because in our contest, it's basically we don't restrict the rules, for example, to 5 phones and 1 tablet or something like that. You just can use every device it's come to your mind. You think it's cool, okay, you just send to us submission. If you think that is really cool, okay, you have reimbursed trip to China, and you can try to get some really good cash rewards. We start this year at $500,000, and next year we hope even more. So basically that's it. It's by the way, it's in painting once a year. So basically that's all for you. So thank you very much. And if you have some questions, please ask.
Thank you, Peter. Any questions?